Okay, so in the last video I showed you the basics for layout containers. I showed you how sometimes the layout containers can change purpose from a horizontal to vertical and vice versa. And then I used color to basically help show you that. We're going to be doing that a little bit more. In today's video I want to focus on something a little bit more challenging, where we essentially use everything that we've learned to create something a little bit more dynamic and interesting. This is a home page system. The idea is that it links to different sheets or different dashboards, and you'd click on an icon and it would take you there. Now those sheets or dashboards aren't actually here yet, so clicking on anything won't do anything, but the thing we want to focus on is the structure. And so I've actually created a colored example here just to try and make things a little bit simpler. So you can see here that we've got a whole range of colors going on, and each one pertains to a layer on the dashboard. And if we look at this structure here, you'll notice that you can actually sort of just about make out that hierarchy here. And if you sort of organize your layout containers, then this is actually quite a useful guide of seeing what's where. So we start off with a tiled section, yes, and then a horizontal section across the whole sheet. In that we have a vertical section which can pretty much contains everything on this sheet. Next to that is a blank section and another blank section. If we expand that again, inside of that we have a horizontal section at the top with a text sort of title inside of it. You have another bit of text below it. As I'm clicking these, you can see that it's highlighting the appropriate section here. And then if we highlight that vertical section there, then you'll see, okay, this vertical section contains more items. So let's go into that. And if we minimize these sections, you start to get the trend here. We're basically stacking containers inside of each other to achieve an overall effect. And the overall effect is that when we look at this dashboard and we start resizing it, it's fairly responsive. If I do this and start moving things around, you'll see it's not as fast, but it responds. And the icons, because these are shapes in a sheet and they're set to fill the entire view, when the space gets small, then they get smaller. So you get a sort of fake responsive sort of feel to the dashboard, where it adjusts to fit whatever height it's given in. It's sort of put in, which is, I think, quite nice. And similarly with width, these lines can show you here that, you know, if you had an image here on the right hand side rather than a blank space, then you'd essentially get sort of an expanding and diminishing image. And so if we go back to the sheet here and we get the dashboard hierarchy out, you start to see, basically, if you put together all the tips and tricks that we've learned so far on layout containers, you can start to build some quite compelling user interfaces that you can use. And so I'm just going to walk you through how I built this, and whilst I'm doing that, you'll see a few tips and tricks that I use to make this fast and simple. So I'm going to minimize that, and we're going to go back to this sheet. I'm going to create a new dashboard. For now, we're not going to use any of the sheets that we've built so far. We're just going to use this sort of area here on the left. Let me just give myself a little bit more space. So to start with, I'm going to make this automatic. I'm going to make it fill the whole screen, just so you can see what I'm doing. Next up, the first thing I'm going to drag on is a horizontal container. And let's color that so that you can see that it's actually on there. Sometimes it's difficult to know what's going on. So I think colors just help make it a little bit more obvious. So the first thing we've got here is a horizontal container. And inside of that horizontal container, I'm actually going to put a blank area, and that's going to be sort of in on the right hand side. And if you don't believe me, it is in there, but because it's the only thing, it's taking up the whole screen. And then the next thing I'm going to put inside of that is I think I'm going to put a vertical area here on the left hand side. So we've got a vertical and a blank space here. Now the vertical container is actually taking up pretty much all the space, because by default blank containers don't have a set width. They're sort of flexible. And the vertical containers or layout containers automatically adapt. Again, they've got no set width, so what's happening here is that vertical container is taking sort of precedence over this blank area. There's nothing in it, so it becomes the smallest thing on the dashboard. If you were to set a fixed width of that, then obviously it would then abide by that space, but because there isn't any, there isn't anything sort of happening there. Next thing I'm going to drag in is a horizontal container. And again, it looks like I'm just dragging into empty space, but it is actually in there. So just dragged in that horizontal space into the vertical container. And then the first thing is going to be a text space. So let's call this Superstore Sales Menu System. Excuse my spelling. Here we go. And let's make this nice and large. Make it 20, and yeah, so there we go. So now if we highlight that, you'll see that there's a horizontal space in there, and inside of that is a text item. That's perfect. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag another text item, and this is just going to be called description text. So this bit of text describes something. I'm just going to say okay. So we've got this area here at the top, and I'm going to color that layout container again, just so you can see what's going on. I'm going to make it green, and then you've got the text just below that. And then the next thing, now that we've got that layout container in there, is I'm actually going to drag in a blank space. And I do this just to make my life a little bit easier, because sometimes you need something in the container to be able to drop something else in, and you'll see exactly what I mean a little bit later. So I'm going to now drag in the vertical right in between there, and you'll see that that's now taken up all the space again. It's gone and taken the full width, and I can now select this blank space and delete it. So we've got a vertical container, we've got text just above describing what this is, and this is our title. And if we compare that to what we have so far, you see it's very similar. We've got our Superstore sales item there, hover or click on the icons to navigate, which is our description text, and now we're getting into the bulk of sort of the meat of this area here. Now I'm going to use images rather than sheets for now, just to basically show an example of how to do this quickly, but you can use sheets instead of images where I use the icons. So we've got a vertical container in here, and again I'm going to use a blank container. I'm going to put those inside to help me do something a little later on, and you'll see why that is in a second. So I have put in a blank area, it's gone inside of this vertical, and I'm putting another blank area in there. And a lot of this is actually just sort of blind faith. It is there. If you select them, you can see that they're there, but I think as a user sometimes you can think, well, what's going on here? Nothing happened. But you pay attention to this layout view here, because that's where the magic is really happening. And so vertical container automatically resizes anything inside of it equally if they have no set height or width. And that's exactly what's going on here. It's sized the two blank areas the same height. And the width is now abiding by this sort of split that we've got here. You might notice that this has been changing back and forth as we put things in there. That's being controlled by the containers that we put inside and the text items that we put inside. And now the next thing I'm going to do is drag in 5 vertical containers. And these are going in. Again, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And we need 5. So just do one more. There we go. Just to prove that they're going in, I'm going to format those and colour them alternating colours just so you can see what's going on. There we go. Now, I hope you can now appreciate why I use colouring a lot, because imagine if I hadn't coloured anything, this would all just be white, and I wouldn't know what the hell's going on if I was honest. So I'm now going to delete the 2 blank spaces I put in there, and if we select this layout container, and I'm just going to format that, and I'm going to colour it red, you'll see that in our layout container here, in our vertical layout container, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vertical containers, and they're equally spaced out, and you can see that here in the hierarchy. So we've got a horizontal section, our text section just below that, and our vertical section containing 5 more vertical containers. Excellent. Next step is putting these icons and text in there. Icons in my case would be sheets, but I'm just going to use images to keep this video nice and short. So how are we going to put these in there, and how are we going to get them to space nicely? Well, we're going to need a horizontal container. So again, a bit more blind faith here. We're going to put a horizontal container in there and in there. And I know it's doing this because when I hover over the vertical area, the blue line is going around the container to tell me, yes, this is about to get dropped inside of here. And that's what happens. If I put it somewhere else, like there, that would tell me that it's about to put a horizontal container in between the two verticals. We don't want that. So I'm just going to carry on doing what I'm doing. Okay? And you'll see I now have something inside all my vertical containers. And if I select that, you can see that switching there between those two there. Okay. So now that we've done that, again, a bit more blind faith here. If this had no color, you wouldn't be seeing anything. It'd just all still be white. We haven't got a single sheet on here. But what I'm doing is really important. I'm building the structure for my semi-responsive menu system here. So next thing, now that I've got something horizontal in each of the vertical containers, I'm going to put some text in there. And I'm going to call this menu option 1. I'm just going to make this nice and big, and I'm actually going to copy that. I'm a bit lazy today, so I'm just going to copy that in there. And when you do that, you realize a vertical container suddenly shrinks, and in a way that makes sense, because what it's saying is, well, this vertical container doesn't need more space than that height, so let me minimize that and make all the others the same. And if I drag a text item into that one, click OK, you'll see it does the same again. And if I drag another text item into this container here, it does the same again, and again, and when we do the last one, something very different happens. So it said, okay, those are your containers. Let's just have a look and make sure everything went in okay. It's always good just to look back here in your layout view and make sure everything went where you wanted it to go, and that appears to be the case. That's perfect. Yeah, everything went where I wanted it to go. Now the next thing I need to do is to drag in a blank item on the left hand side of each one of these, and that's just going to give me a bit more space to work with. Let's just do that now. We're going to delete these later on, but again, they just make it much easier for me to manipulate. And then in between these, I'm going to use images. This is an icon set that I really like. I use it a lot in Tableau, and it's just got some great icons. So let's just use some random images. Here we go. And when we pick an image in, Tableau realizes, hold on a minute, this image is huge. Let's give it more space, and that's exactly what it does. But let's do that to all of them first, and you can see what decision Tableau is making here. So let's choose another icon so you can see what that looks like. And then we're just quickly running out of space here, but let's keep going. Let's see what happens as we add more. Now can you start seeing it's actually now equally distributing them? It ran out of space at the bottom, so now it's starting to equally distribute the ones at the top. And when we add in an image at the bottom, same thing happens again. And this is a final one. I'll use a paper airplane. Perfect. So we've got our 5 images nicely spread out here, and we're going to get rid of the blank spaces we put on the left hand side. And voila, we have our menu options. Next thing to do is to just center the image and fit them. Again, if these were sheets, you'd probably not be doing this. You'd probably set them to fill the entire view. but at the moment they're resizing because there is something else that is taking up more space. So do you see how when I finally told this one to fit the image, it decided, okay, I'll do that properly now, and it equally distributed everything across the page. And there you go, there's your paper aeroplanes. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the width. I'm going to give all these the same width. I'm going to give them the width of 150. I'm going to copy that because again I'm pretty lazy. And keep going. Where is it? There we go. Okay. And of course they're not all menu option 1, they're different menus. Double click that. And this is the 5th one. Perfect. And so now I'm going to try and remove all the colouring, so you can see that we have really ended up pretty much close to where we started at the beginning, minus a few sort of finishing touches that you can do yourself. So I've taken off the background wallpaper, color on that layout container. I'm just going to select the layout containers here. I'm going to format container. There's nothing there. I'm going to select the layout container here again. There's select the layout container again. There's none there. Perfect. I'm going to select the layout container for the whole thing. And hopefully you're noticing my workflow. I use different methods every single time to get to layout containers. I don't ever use the same one every single time. So here, I'm being slightly slow here. And sometimes when you select the text item and not the layout container. And obviously because we've got the vertical and the horizontal in there, I have to do that twice to get to what I want. And so maybe I'm just going to put in a small blank space in between these. I'm going to reduce that a bit. Use Tableau's automatic snapping sort of feature here. Oh, it doesn't come up. And there we go. That's a very, very quick overview of how to create something responsive, and I hope you agree. There you go. As if I start resizing this, you'll see that everything sort of resizes. Now, if you were using sheets, the idea is that you wouldn't use these blank lines, you'd use something a bit more accurate. So I'd actually use an image in between all of these so that you get the same consistency in each horizontal section. Secondly, I'd use sheets because they give you more control of these icons, and then you can also apply actions on them. You can't apply actions on images. Lastly, if we have a look back at this one, the finished sort of example, just some polishing touches on the font and some information here at the bottom that you can use. But there you go, that's how to build a responsive sort of menu system. In the next video we'll go through tying all of this together. So we'll actually create a Superstore sales dashboard which will have this menu system, and it will have a couple of other dashboards as well that we'll interact with, and we'll cover a few new ideas there.